Now, as the name of the video implies, this is part 8 of a story, so if you haven't seen the first several parts yet, I'd highly recommend checking out part 1, and if you like it, maybe working your way back here to this part. I'll include a link to all previous parts in the description below, and now, without further ado, let's get back to the story. We pick up right where we left off, at the Burning Lars homestead on the desert planet Tatooine, and Plagueis, red saber ignited, stands ready to face Dooku, Qui-Gon, and Anakin, while Maul stands back, clearly not happy about being ordered to sit this one out. And that's when, without any type of look or signal, the three Jedi move as one and attack Plagueis from all sides. And even though the attacks of the Jedi, even the still angry Anakin, are precise and perfectly synchronized, coming one right after the other from all different sides, Plagueis is still able to block all of them as he moves, despite his somewhat awkward appearance, with an easy grace. However, the seamless and relentless attacks do not allow Plagueis the opportunity to counter, but merely defend, and he even has a few close calls where he blocks the saber at the very last instant, and all too often, they are the well-placed and powerful strikes of Dooku. Finally though, and for just the briefest moments, there is a lapse in the Jedi attacks, and Plagueis takes the opportunity to do an incredibly fast spin that emits a wave of red-hued energy from his body that slams into the Jedi, knocking all three backaways, and sending Anakin and Qui-Gon to the ground, but not Dooku, who seemed to be able to weather it for the most part. Then, like a predator, Plagueis springs towards and attacks the now singled out Qui-Gon, who scurries to his feet just in time to block the first of a flurry of swings from Plagueis, but the second one disarms him, and the third he is forced to dive to the ground and out of the way of, while the fourth, that is aimed at his head, is blocked in the nick of time by Dooku. With sabers crossed now, Plagueis glares down at Qui-Gon and says, "This one is unworthy of me, as is the angry child." He then locks eyes with Dooku and grins, "But you are an impressive specimen for a Jedi. You may have them fooled, but not me. You do not reject your emotions, but have learned an uncanny control of them. What a powerful Sith you could be." The corners of Dooku's mouth twitch ever so slightly, as if he's holding back a grin. But before he can say anything, we see Anakin get up and begin to charge at Plagueis with his saber blazing. But Dooku quickly raises a hand and flashes him a look and gives him a quick shake of the head, and Anakin comes to a skidding halt in the sand, looking confused. Both Plagueis and Dooku withdraw their sabers, and then move a few paces back from each other. Dooku then glances down at Qui-Gon and gives him a solemn nod of the head. Qui-Gon looks like he wants to protest this, but then takes a look at Plagueis and then looks back at Dooku and nods. He then gets to his feet, force pulls his saber to him, and makes his way over to the confused Anakin, who quietly asks what's going on. But Qui-Gon says nothing to him, and instead just puts a hand on his shoulder. That's when we see Dooku perform a very elaborate flourish with his saber, before Plagueis simply raises his and calls out, "Apprentice, destroy the other two." Maul grins, nods, and says, "It shall be done, my master." Dooku and Plagueis then, at the exact same moment, attack each other, and in the next moment, Maul ignites both ends of his dual-bladed lightsaber and charges at Anakin and Qui-Gon. We then see Anakin glance at the body of his mother before his face darkens, and he takes off to meet the charging Maul, despite the pleas of Qui-Gon to wait. And this time, Maul is more than ready for Anakin, and easily blocks and counters all his anger-fueled attacks. And just as Qui-Gon reaches them, Maul scores a hit on Anakin across the front of one of his thighs that sends the young Padawan crumbling to the ground as he cries out in pain. But before Maul can finish off Anakin, Qui-Gon begins his own attack that, at first, drives Maul back and puts him on the defensive. But Maul quickly recovers, and soon the two are locked in an evenly matched duel. We then focus back in on Dooku and Plagueis, who are also in a rather evenly matched duel, though it ebbs and flows back and forth, with one looking to be about to get the edge on the other, only to be countered. Finally, the two lock sabers again, and Plagueis says to him, "It is a shame you have such control over your emotions, or I would have sensed them and found you years ago and made you my apprentice." Dooku smiles, but this time it is out of defiance. "Had you encountered me years ago, it only would have meant a sooner end for you. The dark side has nothing to offer me." Dooku then breaks the saber lock and redoubles his efforts and begins to drive Plagueis back, but once again, the two lock sabers, and Plagueis quickly says, "There's something the dark side could offer you, something I could offer you." Again, Dooku grins in defiance, but he doesn't immediately break the saber lock, and instead listens as Plagueis goes on. "Had we met years ago, I have little doubt you would have defeated me. But you now grow old and slow, and death comes for you." Plagueis then breaks the saber lock with a vicious swing, and this time as he attacks, he moves faster and seems more powerful, and Dooku looks like it's taking everything he's got to keep himself from being struck down. This goes on for several seconds before Plagueis lets up, and we see a breathing heavily Dooku listen as Plagueis says to him, "I am Death's master, and greater than any Sith before me. Give in to your anger and fear of the nothingness that awaits you after this life. Release the darkness inside of you that you control, and together you and I could rule this galaxy for 1,000 generations." Dooku's head then lowers, and the torn look on his face betrays the fact that he is considering it. We then hear Plagueis say, as Dooku looks up at Maul and Qui-Gon as they battle, "I see it in your mind. The greatness you desire. It is within your reach." Plagueis then extends a hand to him and continues, "Kneel before me, pledge yourself to my teachings, and you shall know power like you could never imagine." Dooku glances at the hand being extended out to him, but then back at Qui-Gon, who seems to now be tiring a bit against the younger, sprier Maul. That's when Dooku's face gets resolute, and like he's about to go and help him, but Plagueis says, "Your old apprentice does not understand you, and never has. You know your destiny has always been greater than that of any Jedi. You feel it, you crave it. Now let go of that which holds you back, and embrace your true destiny." Dooku's head again lowers, and it looks like he's about to fall to his knees, when suddenly Maul staggers Qui-Gon with a blow to the face with the hilt of his saber, and then he quickly impales him through the chest with the blade. Maul then frees his saber and lets Qui-Gon fall to his knees and collapse face first into the sand as he turns his attention to Anakin, who is screaming out "No" at the top of his lungs. We then focus in on the wide-eyed and angry face of Dooku. But that is when there is a flash, and we suddenly find ourselves with Qui-Gon Jinn on an odd world filled with strange vegetation, and we watch as he quickly puts his hands to his chest, but finds no wound there. That's when he notices, hovering before him, a strange black-robed priestess wearing a white mask, who says to him, "Some destinies, it seems, are unavoidable, for again, you have been defeated by the red and black-faced warrior of the dark side." Qui-Gon shakes his head, looking a bit confused. "Again, the first time I withdrew, and neither of us was truly defeated." The priestess then replies, 1,000 times, in 1,000 different possible futures, you have faced the creature known as Maul, and each time you are defeated by him. The right path, the only path, was to avoid him until he is ultimately destroyed by the one known as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Qui-Gon gives a bit of a grin to hearing his Padawan's old name mentioned destroying a Sith Lord, but then says, "But Anakin's visions given to him by the Force itself, led us to Tatooine to save his mother." The priestess then gives another shake of the head. "No, it was the dark side that gave him those visions, visions that exploited his own desires and used them to begin to lure him down the selfish path, the dark path." The priestess then motions for Qui-Gon to follow, and they begin to walk a path through the strange landscape around them, as she then says, "Only when you are calm and at peace, in a state of true serenity, can one begin to understand the will of the Force, and separate it from their own will and the will of the dark side. This is an ability you have mastered, which is why you and you alone were meant to train the Chosen One, if there was any hope of avoiding the darkness he can bring about." Qui-Gon then shakes his head and says, "But Dooku can now—" The priestess cuts him off, though. "Dooku is consumed by his own desires and his ever-growing need to become a great and memorable leader. Though he acts on behalf of the light now, that can easily change if he but slips a little in his control of the darkness inside of him." Qui-Gon again shakes his head in disagreement and says, "I'm not sure I understand, or share your feelings about Dooku." The priestess responds, "And, in life, you are not meant to understand, but in death, I can continue your training to prepare you to battle the darkness that now corrupts the Force itself, though it may now be impossible for you to pass on what you have learned to the living, which means all shall soon come to darkness in the galaxy." Qui-Gon vehemently shakes his head now. Why must the darkness come to pass now? The Chosen One still lives, and Dooku can train him. But the priestess quickly says, "You and you alone were always destined to be the one to train the Chosen One. Not Dooku, not Obi-Wan, no one but you." This time, Qui-Gon looks confused at the mention of Obi-Wan's name, but says nothing, and the priestess continues, "But above all else, Dooku must not train the Chosen One." Qui-Gon frowns, but he has foreseen himself a great leader of the Jedi and... But the priestess again cuts him off and says, "He has only seen what he wants to see, visions granted to him by the dark side, which knows all too well the temptations of our hearts." Qui-Gon lowers his head and sighs. "These futures you speak of, is there none where Dooku overcomes the darkness?" The priestess is silent for a very long moment. "It is not impossible to escape our destinies, but it is by no means easy. Dooku's greatest fear is to die without fulfilling a grand purpose. Take away that fear, and he could become one of the greatest Jedi ever." Qui-Gon nods. "Tell me, is there anything I can do?" The priestess points in the direction they have been walking, towards a dark cloud on the horizon that crackles with thunder and lightning. "You must face the darkness inside of you, and if you are successful, the great gift will be bestowed upon you. But I fear you are not ready for this challenge, and if you fail, your consciousness will be lost as it becomes one with the Force, and the darkness that spreads within the Force shall continue to go unchecked." Qui-Gon then looks ahead with a look of grim determination on his face as he nods and continues walking on alone. The priestess then calls out to him, "You risk much for your belief in your old master." Qui-Gon smiles and says back to her, "I'm a Jedi. Belief is all I've ever had." There is then another flash, and we're again focused in on the face of Dooku, and it seems as if only a fraction of a second has actually gone by. And in the reflection of those eyes, we can see the body of Qui-Gon Jinn, and then we can see as it slowly fades away, leaving only his clothing and lightsaber behind. We then see Maul, who is about to strike down Anakin, back away so quickly from the disappearing body that he trips over his own 2 feet. We then focus in on the face of Plagueis and see and hear him mutter the word "impossible" before we focus back in on the face of Dooku, who now looks both stunned and saddened. But then he hears the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn echo in his mind, and it says to him, "I will fight the darkness in death, but you, my old friend, must continue to fight it in life. Train Anakin, train him, and together you two shall destroy the Sith." Dooku's head then begins to nod as a smile starts to form on his face. He now turns to the stunned-looking Plagueis and says, "I thought you claimed to be the Master of Death. It seems perhaps that title belongs to my old Padawan." Angry, Plagueis attacks Dooku, but now Dooku seems to have found some type of inner peace that he didn't have before, and he easily blocks and counters all of Plagueis' attacks. And after a few seconds of this, Plagueis calls out to Maul, who still lays on the ground staring at the spot where Qui-Gon was, "Apprentice, destroy the youngling." Finally, Maul seems to snap out of it, and springs to his feet and moves towards Anakin, but Dooku quickly disengages with Plagueis, and using the Force to enhance his speed, moves to stop Maul, getting there just in time. And the fight that ensues between the two is a rather brief one, for Maul is no match for Dooku, who attacks almost violently and viciously, though his face remains completely calm. In seconds, Dooku lands a blow across Maul's chest that almost severs him in half, and immediately he then turns and looks to face Plagueis again, but Plagueis is gone. Dooku seems to consider looking for him, but finally just sighs, lowers his saber, and turns his attention to Anakin. And we see that Anakin has crawled to where the body of Qui-Gon was, and has his master's lightsaber clutched in his hand as tears roll down his cheek, while his eyes are focused on the body of his mother. We then switch scenes and get a shot of the cloning facility on the planet Kamino before we're taken inside and into the white sterile hallways and see two tall and lanky Kaminoans walking and discussing something, as a third approaches them, gives a respectful bow, and says to one of them, "Dr. Search, you are receiving a message." The one named Dr. Search then gives a bit of a bow, thanks the one who delivered the message, and then asks the other to be excused. We're then taken into a small office with Dr. Search, who sits at a desk and hits a button on it, which brings up a small bluish hologram of Darth Sidious. Dr. Search then says, "Ah, Lord Sidious, this is an unexpected pleasure." Sidious quickly says back, "Dispense with the pleasantries, Doctor. There has been a change of plans. I need you to send me all logs, payments, videos, and everything else you have that helps prove that the Jedi Sifo Dyas was the one who originally commissioned the clone army your people are creating." Dr. Search looks caught off guard and says, "That will not be easy. We Kaminoans do not make good liars and deceivers. Most of us, anyway. And, as you no doubt remember, for that reason, only myself and a handful of others know the true purpose of the clone army. If I access the data you request, it may begin to draw suspicion, and my people are very thorough and may start digging in other places they shouldn't." Sidious then snaps back, "I'll take that risk." Dr. Search then replies, "Yes, well, I'm not so inclined to take that risk. I do very much like my job here, and how it allows me to, conduct other research in my free time. And speaking of that," Sidious snarls and says, "if you do this for me, I assure you I will have plenty of new test subjects for you, both living and dead Jedi, to do with as you please." Dr. Search gives what appears to be a smile. "Ah, well, in that case, I'll have the information to you within the hour." The hologram then switches, and instead of it being of Sidious, it is now a hologram of Dr. Search, as we find ourselves in a dimly lit office and see Sidious sitting behind a desk. He then hits a few buttons on that desk, and the hologram of Dr. Search fades away, and is replaced by the image of a Mandalorian in blue and gray armor. Sidious then says to them, "Pre Vizsla, is your strike force ready?" Pre Vizsla nods. "One of my best men, Rigamandi, will lead the first wave, and I shall personally lead the second." Sidious grins. "Good, very good. Wait for my signal and then commence your attack on the Jedi Temple." Pre Vizsla then nods, and the hologram fades away. Sidious then hits another button on his desk, and the door to his office slides open, and in walks both Mas Amedda and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Sidious then lowers his hood, and Palpatine then says to Mas Amedda, "Convene the Senate and inform them I have a statement to make in 1 hour concerning our crisis with the Jedi Order." Mas Amedda blinks in confusion. "But it's so late, and—" "Do it," Palpatine interrupts. Mas Amedda then immediately bows and leaves the room. Palpatine then gets up, raises his hood, and begins to pace about the room. Sidious then says to Kenobi, "There is much you will not understand, but I have recently learned that my old master yet lives, and works against me." Old master, you say?" Obi-Wan says. Sidious nods. "I thought I had destroyed him, but now I am certain he yet lives and plots against me." As soon as he finishes saying that, Sidious stops his pacing and stares at Obi-Wan, who only stutters back. "Old master, as in your old Sith master?" Sidious then says, "Darth Plagueis the Wise. He came to me a great many years ago when I was but a young politician on Naboo. He taught me much, and though I hate to admit it, he is the reason I was able to so quickly and easily ascend the political ladder." On Obi-Wan's face, we can now see an odd combination of confusion and concern as the wheels begin to churn in his mind. Sidious then says, "Yes, I know he is the reason I found you, though by the look on your face, I do wonder what he told you, for you did not seem to realize what he was, until right now." Obi-Wan shakes his head. "I didn't, and yet I think I did." Sidious grins, but it quickly fades as he says, "The real question is if I was supposed to realize he had sent you to me, if this is a part of his plan or not. Either way, I am going to do something he could have never foreseen." Obi-Wan says nothing to that, and the confusion on his face only seems to grow as Palpatine continues. "Do not worry, my apprentice. I have no plans on destroying you, not yet at least, for soon your true desire will be revealed to me, as together we watch the end of the Jedi Order." And that is where this part ends. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of this part of the story and what might happen next. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.